once the Western allies decided that now it was time to get a foothold on the European continent, and they decided to land in Sicily.
That's right, Sicily.
And here the intelligence gathering was very much left to the Americans, as the Americans had a large Italian and especially Sicilian diaspora.
Yes.
So the Americans were tasked with finding people on the island that they could cooperate with. Naturally, you find the enemies of my enemy. And when it came to the situation in Sicily, Mussolini had famously rooted out the mafia on the island. He didn't only make the trains run on time, as they reminisce fondly in Italy, but he also rooted out the mafia. So apart from his brutality and his murderous qualities is the wrong word, but that part of him, he did other things that in Italy and especially in Sicily, sometimes he still remembered fondly for. So rooting out the mafia was one of those things. Many of them fled to especially New York, but the East Coast in general in the US. And famously, one of the great mobsters of the time, Lucky Luciano, was contacted by American intelligence, and he had still very good contacts on the island. Quickly, they received all the information they needed. In some cases, there was even some active cooperation with these mafia members, simply joining the American troops and following them everywhere to be able to point out where the local fascist administrator in whatever village would live. So this type of intelligence gathering is key. And today in Ukraine, when the counter-offensive is happening in the areas where it is, Zaporizhia, Zaporizhia is a region which is ethnically more than 90% Ukrainian. There isn't really a lot of sympathies for the Russian cause in those areas. In other parts, in Luhansk, in Donetsk, you could say that there is still, there are more ethnic Ukrainians than ethnic Russians. There is more support for Ukraine than there is for Russia, but we cannot ignore the fact that there is a component of those societies that would rather live under Russian rule than Ukrainian, and then naturally that complicates the thing a little bit. In Zaporizhia and in Kherson, those sentiments practically don't exist. So the Ukrainians, they are certainly receiving a lot of information on exactly where ammunition storages are located, at what time a certain train is running, and so on. And we also saw this in the lead up to the counteroffensive, that the Ukrainian side hit the railway nodes quite strongly, and the railways play, whether it is 1914 or 2023. Most of the equipment, if you're moving large quantities of equipment, are still being moved by rail. So by taking that out, you quickly have a better chance at success. So we're still very early on into this operation. There were some pictures that emerged of a couple of cases where the Ukrainian attack didn't go according to plans, where you had a couple of Leopard tanks provided by the West that had been taken out, a couple of minesweepers that are basically other form of tanks that are instead given this, they almost look like some spiders. They have, or some agricultural machines that they go through the ground and make sure that those mines detonate far away from danger. But those are very valuable pieces of equipment that are very difficult to build. The Ukrainians don't have a lot of them. They're expensive, so losing a couple of them is a big blow. And in these pictures that were showing these Leopards, these minesweepers, American Bradley IFVs being destroyed, abandoned, or damaged, immediately this is something that the Russian propaganda seizes on, and they try to tell the world, see, there is no point in sending this equipment to Ukraine. They don't know how to handle it, or our weapons are so powerful that we will take them out anyway immediately. But whenever you speak to any military analysts, they will say that there is no counteroffensive that can take place without losses on your own side.
Of course.
The landing vessels, the amphibious vessels during D-Day, it was certain that many of them would simply sink due to the waves. Not all of them would be able to even land on the beaches, and once there, it's always hard punching through that first line of defense. Even harder to punch through the main line of defense, which is never the first one. But once you breach through somewhere and you can start to spread out behind their back, so to say, this is when that mobility comes into play, and you can start spreading out on large terrains. When the enemy starts to panic, starts to lose cohesion. It's as always in battle, the greatest losses are inflicted during a rout. That is when effective defense is no longer possible. So that is why the military experts are telling people to maintain their cool and let the offensive continue, and the real results can only be drawn much later on. So we still have to...
We have to wait and see, but anyway, thank you for that introduction. That's been very helpful.
Thank you.
Alas, the clock in the corner of the room has defeated us once more, but nevertheless, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we have, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History. In the meantime, thank you for watching.